Kippur of Yovel and Rosh Hashanah are similar when it comes to Tkiyah Shofar and the brachas of Musaf Shemona Esrei, but how could that be? We have that part of Musaf Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah Isa b'Yovel, that's relevant only on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was the beginning of the world, but Yovel is not the beginning of the world, so how can we say that they're similar in brachas? So we say no, Ki Ketani, when did our Mishnah say that the Yom Kippur of Yovel and Rosh Hashanah are similar when it comes to brachas? Ashar, that means all the remaining brachas, just not that specific bracha. Now Rav Shisha Brei Rav Idi Masni Hachi, he taught it as follows: Amar Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Hadit Nan, that which our Mishnah says, Shav HaYovel Rosh Hashanah L'Tkiyah Brachas, that Yovel of Yom Kippur is similar to Rosh Hashanah when it comes to blowing shofar and the brachas of Musaf Shemona Esrei. Kaman, who's that like? Do like Rabbi Lezer? It's not like Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer, it's like Rabbi Lezer. Kivon Amar, since he says B'Tishrei Nivra Olam, the world was created on Tishrei. Ha'ika, we have this part of Shemona Esrei that says Zehayim Tchilas Masechas Zikaron L'Yom Rishon, the Rosh Hashanah Isa. That's relevant on Rosh Hashanah Yovel Lezer, but that's not relevant on Yovel. So we answer once again, it could be like Rabbi Lezer because Kikatani. When is it the Mishnah says that Yom Kippur of Yovel is similar to Rosh Hashanah? That's Asha'ar. That's regarding all the other brachas, not that specific bracha. And now different types of psulim with the shofar. Shofar nistak v'dibkai, pasul. If he has a shofar that was split in half lengthwise and then he glued it together, it's pasul. Dibek shiva shofar is pasul. If he connected a bunch of pieces of shofar together, it's pasul. Imagine you take a shofar and you split it into many different pieces and you glued them together. That's going to be pasul as well. It's like more than one shofar. It's like 2 or 3 shofars. Let's say it has a hole and then he plugged the hole. If that prevents the tekiah from sounding like a regular tekiah, pasul, so it's pasul. Vimlav, but it doesn't prevent the tekiah. It sounds like a normal tekiah. Kasher says kasher. He blew the shofar into a pit or a cistern or cellar into a large barrel. Im kol shofar shama. If he's able to hear the sound of the shofar alone, yatsa, so he's yatsa. Im kol avar shama. But if he also hears the sound of the echo, la yatsa, he's not yatsa. And someone who's passing by a shul, his house is right next to the shul. V'shama kol shofar. He hears the shofar coming from shul. I call Megillah, or hears the person reading the Megillah. Im kivan libay. If he has kavanah to be yatsa, then yatsa, he's going to be yatsa. V'im laf. If not, if he doesn't have kavanah, lo yatsa, he's not yatsa. And alf pisha zeh shama v'zeh shama. Even though this one heard and that one heard, zeh kivan libay, v'zeh like kivan libay. This one had kavanah and this one didn't have kavanah. And now our Gemara says, Tanarban, we have a brisa. Arech v'kitzroi. Let's say he had a very long shofar and he shortened it. He cut off a piece. Kasher, it's still kasher. Gerdoi. Let's say he shaved it down. He took the thickness of the shofar and he just shaved it down till it was very thin. V'mida agildoi, and he made it as thin as possible. Kasher, it's still kasher. Tzipo zav. Let's say he coated it with gold. Makam anachas peh. If that's where the mouthpiece was, pasul, so it's pasul. Shaloi makam anachas peh. If it's not where the mouthpiece is, kasher, so it's kasher. Tzipo zav mebifnim. Let's say he coated it with gold on the inside of the shofar. Pasul, it's pasul. That's because he's not hearing the sound of the shofar. It's the sound of gold. And mibachutz, if he plated it with gold on the outside, so then it depends. If that changed the sound of the shofar, pasul, then it's pasul. Vimla. But if not kasher, so it's still kasher. Nikivustame. Let's say it had a hole in it and he plugged it up. If that's going to change the tekiah, pasul, then it's pasul. Vimla kasher. If not, then it's going to be kasher. Let's say nasan shofar b'sech shofar. He took one shofar and put it inside another. He had a very wide stubby shofar and a very thin long narrow shofar, and he took the thin long narrow one and put it inside the wide stubby one. In kol pnimi shama, if when he blows the shofar he only hears the sound of the inner shofar because that's long and thin and he's not really blowing the outside shofar at all, so yatsa, he's going to be yatsa. But vim kol chitzen shama, if he hears the sound of the outer shofar as well, la yatsa, so he's not yatsa. That's considered like 2 shofars. And Tanar Rabban, a similar brisa. Gerda, let's say he shaved it down. Maybe whether he shaved it from the inside or the outside, kasher, it's kasher. Gerda v'midal gildai, let's say he shaved it down and he made it very, very thin. Kasher, it's still kasher. He niach shofar b'sech shofar, he placed one shofar inside the other. Im kol pnimi mishama, if he's able to hear the inside shofar only, yatsa, then he's yatsa. But vim kol chitzen shama, if he's able to hear the sound of the outer shofar, la yatsa, so he's not yatsa. Hafchai, let's say he turned it over. V'taka bay, and he blew into it. La yatsa, he's not yatsa. Now, what does that mean he turned it over? Rav Papa says, la tema de hafchai kituna. That doesn't mean that he turned it inside out like a shirt, like somehow he managed to turn the shofar inside out. Ella, so what does that mean? He widened the narrow part and he narrowed the wide part, which means he basically stuck it in boiling hot water and he completely reshaped the shofar, and that's not good. My time why is that? Because Rav Masna, he says, the pasuk says about shofar, v'ha'avarta, and the continuation of the pasuk is v'ha'avarta shofar trua, and literally this means you shall cause to pass the sound of the shofar. But how do we darshan it? Derech ha'avarasa be'inon. We have to have it the way of its havara, meaning the way it's carried around by the animal. We have to keep that shape, and we're not allowed to change the shape, the wide part to the narrow part, the narrow part to the wide part, and that's why he's not yotze. Even though it looks like a shofar and it sounds like a shofar, he has to use it in the same shape it comes off of the animal. And we had said in the Mishnah, dibek shofar is possible if he connected a number of pieces of shofar together, so it's possible. It's considered like 2 shofars or more. Tanur Rabban, we have a brass like this. Let's say he added on a little piece to his shofar. Ben b'mina, ben shalai b'mina. Whether it's the same min as the shofar, meaning he took a piece from a different shofar and added on to his shofar, or shalai b'mina, he took a piece of wood and added on to his shofar. Possible, it's possible. It's because it's more than one shofar. Nikivu stomach. Let's say it has a hole in it. He plugged it up. Ben b'mina, ben shalai b'mina. Whether he plugged it up with a piece of a shofar or with something else, which is glue or something else, possible, it's possible. Now, Rav Nassanheimer, he says b'mina kasher. If he plugged it up with min, meaning he took shofar and that's what he plugged his shofar with, so then it's kasher. Shalai b'mina possible. It's only possible if you use not min, meaning if you use glue or use something else. Now, Rav Nassan, I just said b'mina kasher. kosher if he used shofar to plug the hole in his shofar, so it's kosher. Rabbi Yechon said on that, that's only if the majority of the shofar is still left. Mechlal, that implies the shaloi b'minai, if he used not min, meaning if he used some other material to plug the hole, even though the majority of the shofar is left, pasul, so it's pasul. Now, ikad amri la seifa, some say that Rabbi Yechon said his comment on the seifa, shaloi b'minai pasul, if he plugged it with not min, so it's pasul. Rabbi Yechon he said, that's only if the majority of the shofar is missing. Mechlal, what that implies, the b'minai, if he used min, if he used shofar, even though the majority of the shofar is missing, kosher, it's still kosher. And we had said, pasul, if he coated it with gold on the inside of the shofar, it's pasul. But if he plated it with gold on the outside, if it changed the sound, so then pasul. But if it didn't change the sound, kosher, so it's kosher. Let's say it cracked lengthwise, pasul. But if it cracked widthwise along the width of the shofar, if from the crack to the mouthpiece we still have shear tekiah left, kosher, then it's kosher. But if from the crack to the mouthpiece we don't have shear tekiah, pasul, then it's pasul. And mekam shear tekiah, what is shear tekiah? Meaning, what's the minimum size your shofar is allowed to be? He explains, you have to be able to hold the shofar in your hand, and then a little bit of the shofar sticking out on this side and sticking out on that side, that's considered shear tekiah. Let's say the sound of the shofar was very thin. It was like this thick, heavy sound. Or it was dry sound. Kosher, it's still kosher. Because all kailas, all sounds that are produced by a shofar are kosher. And they sent the following to the father of Shmuel. Kedacha, he drilled a hole in it, and then he blew into that. Yatzai, so he's yatzai. The Gemara asks, Pshita, isn't that obvious? All shofars have to be drilled. When we take the shofar off the ram's head, you have to cut off the tip because it's pointy, and then you have to make a hole in it. So of course he's going to be yatzai. What's the chiddush over here? Ravashi answers that they were actually talking about a specific case. He drilled a hole in the bony part of the shofar. What does that mean? Horned animals all have a bone that grows from their head, and the horn grows on that bone. So once the horn is cut off, the bone has to be removed, leaving the hollow shell-like shofar to be used. So what they sent to the father of Shmuel is that if he left the bone inside the shofar and made a hole in that, he would still be yatzei. And what's the chiddush over here? You might have thought min b'minai chaytzeitz. Even though this is min b'minai, this is all part of the shofar. It all comes from the animal. It's still all part of the shofar. It's still considered chatzitza. When he blows into it, it's considered like he's hearing the sound of the bone and not the sound of the shofar. Kamash Mlan, the chiddush is, since it's min b'minai, it's not a chatzitza, and it's considered like he's hearing the sound of the shofar. And we had said in the Mishnah, and Amar Afuni, he says, Lo Shanu, who was only taught that hearing the echo is no good. That's only people that are standing on the edge of the bar, because then they're hearing the echo and they're not hearing the sound of the shofar. But the people that are standing inside the bar, yatsu, they're yatsu because they're not hearing the echo, they're hearing the sound of the shofar. And Tainami Hach, we have a brass like this. Yatsu, you're yatsu. I have a Tanan, our Mishnah says, Lo yatsu, he's not yatsu. And Allah Shma Mina, must be Rav Huna, Shma Mina. It's like what Rav Huna said, that if you're inside the bar, so you're hearing the sound of the shofar. If you're outside the bar, so then you're hearing the sound of the echo. And some ask this as a question. Tanan, our Mishnah says, Lo yatsu. I have a Tan, you have a brass that says yatsu. And Amar Rav Huna says, Like Kasha. The people are saying at the edge of the bar, they're hearing the echo, and therefore they're not yatsu. And this is talking about the people standing inside the bar, they're not hearing the echo, and therefore they are yatsu. We're going to stop here for the day. Pick up tomorrow, continue to talk about shofar. For now, everyone should have a wonderful day.